So often, Gospels in successive weeks are almost meant to be read together because they are so connected. And I think it's this way with this Gospel and last Sunday's Gospel. Last Sunday, from the beginning of chapter 18 in Luke's Gospel, we heard the parable of the persistent widow. Our Lord's command to us to pray always without becoming weary. And in my homily, I gave the image of falling in love. All of us have had that experience, and we know that when we're in love, we can't wait to be with the one whom we love. We're saddened when we're separated. We treasure every moment with them. And we love just talking to the other, listening to the other, and just hanging out with the other. And that image is meant to guide us in our prayer life, because our prayer life is time spent with the one who loves us infinitely and the one whom we are meant to love first and foremost in our lives. Today's parable, of course, picks up later in that same chapter on this theme of prayer. Jesus begins the parable by saying, two people went up to the temple area to pray, and yet their expressions there and their experiences there could not be more different. The Pharisee is not focused on the love of God and expressing his love of God. The Pharisee is focused on himself, what he does, and then on another, what the other fails to do. He's not praying, he's judging. He's judging using that faculty that the Lord gives us that we need to do in so many areas of our life to be able to decide between different things, but using it in the one area that we can never legitimately do so, judging one another's soul or judging ourselves in a kind of self-righteousness. And so see how different is the attitude of the tax collector. He stands off at a distance. He is spending time in love of the Lord. He knows his own weakness, and he simply says, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." Again, the message is clear that our prayer life, we need that attitude of honesty and humility. See, God knows everything. He knows the darkest aspects of our own lives. He longs to heal us at the core of our being. God only and always loves us, not just because when we're good, but always because he is good. And when we are honest with ourselves, then we allow God to be honest with us, to show us maybe our weaknesses, to show us how he always responds to our weakness with his healing and his infinite mercy and strength. St. Paul in our second reading is writing to his dear friend Timothy, and he has that awareness that his life is coming to an end. It's not imminent, but it is coming, like it is for all of us. And he writes, "The time of my departure is at hand. I have competed well. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." How can he say this except for that deep life of prayer that has been his? Later this week, we will celebrate two great feasts in the life of the church. Friday, November 1st, of course, the Feast of All the Saints, and then Saturday, November 2nd, of All Souls. Then throughout the month of November, we'll focus especially to remember all of those who have gone before us, praying at every Mass for all those whose names are inscribed on our All Souls envelopes. We see for all of us, as St. Paul does, how our life will soon end at a time known only to God. And prayer is this most essential means by which you and I can then prepare for that moment. And so we reflect upon this gospel and a little bit with last Sunday's gospel, seeing our prayer life as this expression of our falling in love with the Lord. Let us strive to be like the tax collector in our parable, not allowing judgmentalism or pride to creep in and corrupt our prayer, but approaching God, again, in the words of last Sunday's gospel, always and without becoming weary. Let us acknowledge our sinfulness. That most beautiful prayer of the tax collector, "Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner." So that acknowledging that most basic truth, it may bring us that most wonderful blessing of the infinite mercy of God. As our life is then spent in prayer with the most important focus that any of us can have, preparing for that moment that awaits for us at death, strong and secure in our communion with Christ, able, we hope and pray, to one day say with St. Paul, "I have competed well. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith."